Fantastic to have you all here today. In terms of our agenda, we will be addressing a number of elements around business process outsourcing. I do encourage you to use the Q&A button on the Zoom interface throughout the session. You will see that we have a dedicated Q&A slot at the end where we'll address any and all questions that are asked. So feel free to use that as we continue through the session. I would like to introduce our speakers, of course, Ronnie, the CEO of Kilimanjaro Consulting, and Jehan, the CEO of Infomate. Without any further ado, I'm going to pass over to Ronnie to kick us off with our session, a little bit of an introduction to Kilimanjaro and a little bit of content around BPO. Over to you, Ronnie.
Thanks, Stephen, and thank you everyone for attending today. For those of you that are not familiar with Kilimanjaro Consulting, we're MYOB's largest and most experienced implementer of MYOB enterprise solutions. That means MYOB XO and the MYOB Advanced product, which is essentially the Acumatica ERP system. And these products are designed for larger and more complex businesses. We've got a large team across Australia and New Zealand. We're just pushing, I think, 115 people. And those people are focused on improving efficiency in businesses through the clever use of creative, innovative, and proven technology. And as Stephen said, many of you here today, but not all, are our clients. Now, it may seem somewhat strange that a company that's focused on using technology to improve efficiency in business is actually looking at a service which deals with people rather than technology. But there's a clear reason for that. We can do all sorts of things with technology, but there's still a significant number of elements in your business built into your workflows where people are absolutely essential. One thing that COVID taught us is how to work remotely, and it's quite apparent that whether somebody's working from home in the suburbs of Sydney or the suburbs of Auckland or the suburbs of Melbourne or working from Colombo in Sri Lanka, it really doesn't make that much of a difference because the technology now supports that really well. In fact, it supports it brilliantly. But to add to those technological advancements, most of us at this stage will also be experiencing a shortage of skilled people. We've all gone through the Great Resignation. There are huge movements in people. There's a slowdown in migration. And so the idea of using technology to enable offshore assistance for your financial processes actually starts to make a lot of sense. The benefit that this has to you in your organizations is that you can move your existing people in the organization to positions of higher value, and those are typically the customer-facing roles in your organization, and you can outsource the backroom functions to an organization like Infomate. I should also note that Kilimanjaro over the years has been very, very selective about who we partner with. And when we select a partner, we've got a very robust process in deciding, and this holds true for all ISVs in the technology space, and we've now extended that into the people space as well. But we're using the same criteria for selecting a partner. And so we would look at things like credibility, qualifications, leadership, longevity, how long have they been around for, their track record. What's very important now is data and IP security, and then, of course, the value proposition. Does this make sense, and can we achieve savings in improving our efficiencies? So in a moment, Jehan will take us through why we've selected Sri Lanka. So why Sri Lanka, but why, and why Infomate. But what was particularly attractive to us with Infomate is you're dealing with a large publicly listed company. It ticks all the above boxes and gives us a high degree of confidence that we will achieve really good outcomes for our clients. So Stephen, that's it from me by way of introduction, and I will leave it to Jehan to take us through some more details about who his company is, why Sri Lanka, and what services are being offered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ronnie. It is my privilege to be a part of this webinar and honored to partner Kilimanjaro. My topic for today is the shared services model for finance and accounting as a sustainable solution for the twin challenges of talent and rising costs. Post-pandemic, we are seeing rising wages, historically low unemployment, and the upshot being 90% of businesses are impacted by staffing shortages, thus limiting their growth. Also, we see that post-pandemic, as Ronnie shared, CFOs are more comfortable with work being done remotely in any part of the world, as they have witnessed how effectively it could be done. This was an online CFO survey that I conducted on LinkedIn, and 45% of the CFOs surveyed expected an increased use of outsourcing post-pandemic. Before introducing Informate, a little bit on Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka was rightly called a hidden gem for outsourcing by A.T. Kearney, uniquely positioned to offer highly skilled talent and a strong business environment. The Australian had this quote, "Some countries have oil, others sit on vast deposits of ore. Now Sri Lanka is striving to capitalize on its own bountiful resource, a mountain of accountants." Indeed, some suggest that accounting is now embedded in the national DNA. The New York Times expressing similar sentiments. So something I often say, Sri Lanka is a beautiful country, but we are very boring people. You have too many of us accountants. Sri Lanka has also been consistently ranked highly by several research bodies, including the National Outsourcing Association, now called GSA, Global Sourcing Association, UK. And Sri Lanka was in fact Destination of the Year in 2013, 14, and most recently in 2019. A.T. Kearney ranked Sri Lanka #1 in financial attractiveness. And also you have a spirit of innovation that pervades our companies. The World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, ranked Sri Lanka second in South Asia in their Global Innovation Index. And it also helps that Sri Lanka is a fantastic country to visit, great beaches, a lot of history, culture. So Lonely Planet's Destination of the Year 2019. Right now, in fact, we have some of our Australian clients visiting us, and we would invite each of you at some point to pay a visit. It really is a fantastic country to visit. A little known fact is that some of the best known global brands, including IFS, London Stock Exchange, HSBC, Pearson, they have their back office centers in Sri Lanka. So HSBC has 3,000 people here. London Stock Exchange, the technology that powers some of their bigger stock exchanges is developed and maintained here. A drone technology that is used to fight forest fires in Australia is developed here. Tammy Barton, I think she was Australian of the Year and South Australian Businesswoman of the Year 2 years running. She has her software development center in Colombo, Sri Lanka. So we have a long history of trade between Sri Lanka and Australia and last year we marked 75 years of trade between our two countries. Similar sentiments in New Zealand as well. In fact, my company Informate, we do payroll services for the New Zealand High Commission based in Sri Lanka. We have our Sri Lankan cricket team also in New Zealand at this moment, not doing very well, I'm afraid. But a long history of trade between Sri Lanka, Australia, and New Zealand. Now coming to the John Keells Group, which is the parent company of Informate. The John Keells Group has a history of 150 years, a workforce of nearly 15,000, a market cap of $1.3 billion on the Colombo Stock Exchange. And the John Keells Group is highly diversified. They are in 7 different industry groups, including retail, consumer foods, real estate. We are the largest private owner of land in Colombo, and in leisure. We own the largest number of hotel rooms in Sri Lanka. And interestingly, in the Maldives, we have 4 properties in the Maldives, 8 resort hotels. So I'd like to repeat my invitation. If you would like to visit either the Sri Lanka or the Maldives, do please let us know. We can arrange some fantastic deals. The John Keells Group is also into transportation and financial services. So Informate is part of the IT group of the JKH Group. This is the flagship project of JKH. It's a $1 billion investment. It's called Cinnamon Life. It's a mixed development project designed by Cecil Balmont, who designed the London Olympic Stadium. So it's going to consist of an 800-room, 5-star hotel, residential units, office complex, high-end retail, and gaming. So it's going to be an iconic building that will transform the skyline of Colombo. $1 billion investment. So this will give you an idea of the financial strength and the credibility of our parent company, the John Keells Group. Over the years, JKH Group has established strong international partnerships with leading companies such as DHL, Maersk, American Express, Fairfax, Citibank, which has actually invested into John Keells. We've developed software which is used by Emirates, by Qatar Airlines. And a lot of the values that are cherished in the Western world, including diversity and inclusion, ESG and sustainability, are championed by John Keells. We have the John Keells Foundation, which works in the areas of education, environment, health, livelihood development, disaster relief. So it is a company that is a responsible business that believes in making a difference. So coming to Informate, Informate is a wholly owned subsidiary of JKH. We were the first shared services center in Sri Lanka, and we have 17 years experience. We have over a decade of working with Australia with some leading brand names. We are ISO 27001 certified when it comes to information security. So we have a lot of world-class methodologies, which Ronnie alluded to. And it's a socially responsible organization. We have 62% female representation in our workforce. We pioneered the country's first rural BPOs. We have an initiative to be carbon neutral by 2025. So we too believe in making a difference through business. We have a team of 400, many of them finance professionals with international qualifications. So coming to our service portfolio, we have end-to-end accounting functions that we have experience in. So these include procure to pay, order to cash, fixed asset management, record to report, bank reconciliations, general ledger management, balance sheet analysis, variance analysis, and also some of the higher end functions like credit evaluations, identity checks. And these are services that we offer for companies around the world. And as Ronnie said, the transaction work is something that your team could be freed up from so that they have more time to spend on more value-added activities, including negotiations on pricing, on looking at banks, looking at more value-added activities for your companies, whilst the transaction processing tasks are handled by an expert provider. We are very big in terms of documentations. We document all of our processes. We go down to the level of screenshots and callouts and detailed process flow diagrams. This is something that our clients have really valued and appreciated. And here's a checklist of activities that we've worked with companies around the world. They're very good at what they do. But when it comes to the back office, these are some questions worth pondering on. Now, coming to master data, is master data centralized with limited access? When was the last time a master cleansing exercise was undertaken? Are there duplicate masters? So often we've seen that companies who are very, very good at what they do, but when it comes to their use of their ERP system, very often they are making suboptimal use of their system and not getting the full value of it. And that includes reporting. Are all standard financial statements extracted from MYOB or Acumatica? What we've seen in many companies is there's a lot of use of Excel sheets, Excel templates. Are product profitability, client-wise profitability extracted directly from your ERP system? Is there integration in place with Power BI? So these are some questions relating to process worth pondering on. I'd like to relate a story. We had a client from Australia visiting us some years ago, and he asked us this question. He said, I will give you the work, but here's a challenge. I would want my finance division to be world-class in 1 year's time. So we went away and we researched what is world-class, and we found that in several research papers like Hackett and APQC, they have in fact defined a series of metrics that define what is world-class. For instance, percentage of PO-based invoices over total invoices, percentage of electronic invoices, percentage of automated transactions, the number of days for month-end closure, finance cost per transaction, finance cost as a percentage of revenue. So what we did is we sent our team to Brisbane, we baselined, we analyzed their numbers, we baselined where they were at that point, and then we had a series of interventions, including automating transactions, documenting, bringing in best practices. And after 1 year, in several of those indicators, they met or exceeded the world-class benchmark. We have a global footprint of clients. Australia is our biggest export market, followed by Sweden, UK, the US, Saudi Arabia. And here are some of the case studies and client comments. So this is the co-founder and CEO of a management consulting company in Australia. We have worked with Informate over a year, and their support is central to continued growth and development. The whole team in Sri Lanka is extremely efficient and easy to work with. A large agribusiness based in Brisbane, so we handle accounts payable, receivable, general ledger, reconciliations, fixed assets, bank recs for them. We work Australian calendar and Australian hours. And this was a comment that we were very, very proud of from their shared services manager. We have made gains across the board in the finance function, including productivity, accuracy, and processing times. Informate is not a basic outsourcing provider. They are constantly looking for value-add and new ways where they can help us lift our finance activities to world's best practice. A real estate company in Australia, and this was during the pandemic. As per remote working, I see no difference from work on site at office. Every task has been executed smoothly without any disruption. I appreciate the team's hard work. A financial services company in the UK, I was very impressed with the team's performance and attitude towards home working. There's been continued support and service levels have remained high. Hats off to the guys. They've continued to work hard and remained diligent. Locally in Sri Lanka, we work with the Unilever Group, a very well-known FMCG company. We appreciate the hard work and commitment of the entire Informate team and its management. We feel that our finance has an extended family at Informate. Thank you for the excellent professional work. In terms of certifications and methodologies, information security obviously hugely important. We are audited by Bureau Veritas annually. We have our own audit team that conducts monthly audits. Every member of the staff signs NDAs. We all go through information security training, multiple levels of information security built in. And we have a very young, energetic, creative staff at Informate. So in order to keep them engaged, we have an active HR calendar, which includes sports, it includes CSR activities, it includes a lot of training and development. Our staff really values continuous learning. So this includes a mix of technical skills and soft skills. And we believe in making a difference through business. So these are 3 rural villages of Sri Lanka, one in the North Central province, one in the tsunami-affected south, and the other in the formerly war-affected Jaffna. So we are very proud that we employ 50 rural youth who work on for the John Keel's group, carrying out a range of accounting functions. And interestingly, about the Sinigama project down south, that has been supported by several of the Australian cricketers, including Michael Bevan, Steve Waugh, Shane Warne. They've all visited, particularly after the tsunami, and they've made a huge difference, donating cricket equipment, helping rebuild houses and lives. So the people here are very, very grateful to the Australian cricketers who have done a lot really to uplift that community. So in summary, our value proposition goes beyond just arbitrage and pricing. It's about recommendations and best practices on process, enabling your team to focus on your core and free your staff from routine transaction-related work. Access to talent, which is becoming a huge challenge today. Committed SLAs, KPIs, and detailed documentations. We can support 24/7 operations. We are backed by the John Keel's Group, Sri Lanka's leading listed conglomerate. And also the personalized attention and lifelong partnerships. Now, if you look at our logo, it has the blue, which stands for the professionalism, the numbers, the KPIs, the SLAs, and it also has the warm orange, which stands for the personalized attention and the lifelong partnerships and friendships and the warmth that we pride ourselves in. Finally, it's a variable cost structure with long-term cost efficiencies. So thank you very, very much. It's been a privilege to partner Ronnie and his fantastic team at Kilimanjaro, and I look forward to taking any questions. And we have a testimonial from one of our clients in Australia, which we will now share with you. Thank you very, very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Blair Lucas, and I'm the Group Commercial Director for Acclaim. Our journey with Infomate started many years ago. We were growing very, very rapidly, but were struggling to identify good quality talent in Australia to build out our finance team. So like many other companies, we started looking abroad to identify offshoring options for this particular team. We looked into many countries, the Philippines, India, Sri Lanka, and eventually settled on Sri Lanka for a number of reasons. One is, of course, the very large number of highly qualified and experienced accounting personnel in Sri Lanka, but also because we came across Infomate. And our relationship with Infomate from day one was extremely positive. Not only were Infomate able to meet our immediate needs in plugging the gaps in our accounting team, but also they were also very open and willing to work alongside us and with us, not only to meet our unique requirements here in Australia with our particular client base, but also to further develop, scale, and increase the amount of work that their team could take on in Sri Lanka. Obviously, this has been key to our growth. We now act for around about 400 clients here in Australia, for which we provide accounting and tax compliance services, and we simply would not have been able to grow at the pace that we have, and also to be able to responsively meet the needs of our clients without having this key support by Infomate in Sri Lanka. Obviously, they're extremely good in terms of maintaining quality across their deliverables and extremely responsive and able to work with a number of platforms that we've had to use across the year as we remain tech-enabled and grow ourselves. In terms of the business benefits, it's obvious. As I'm sure many of us are aware these days, finding talent in Australia is very, very challenging in the post-pandemic environment, and retaining that talent in a highly competitive environment presents its own challenges. With Infomate, we've been able to have that solid support and foundation for growth, enabling us to work collaboratively across both Sri Lanka and Australia to make sure that we can deliver upon our commitments to our clients. And it's also enabled us to be very creative in exploring other options and other methods of delivering our accounting and tax compliance services. Obviously, I would recommend Infomate to any companies out there that are looking to find an alternative solution to either managing your own in-house accounting requirements or delivering accounting services to third parties. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.
Fantastic. Great to hear from Blair there in terms of their experience with Infomate. Now, of course, we are coming towards the Q&A part of today's session. I do encourage you to use that Q&A button to ask any questions that you might have. We've got a few here lined up, and so I might just get Gehan to rejoin me, and I might ask you a few questions at this point. The first one here, how large is Informate? And there's some specific questions. How many customers, how many full-time employees, and how many ASX listed clients do you currently have?
Sure, thank you for that, Stephen, and thank you for that question. So we have a team of 400. We have over 150 customers, and we have 10 customers in Australia. We also have customers in other parts of the world, including Europe and the US, but we have 10 customers in Australia, and we've been serving clients in Australia for over a decade now.
Fantastic. Another question here, what's the typical turnaround time like? I know that's probably a bit of a broad question, Gehan, but if you can maybe just talk to that.
Sure, that's a great question, and we believe in measuring all aspects of performance. So turnaround time is one of our key performance indicators, along with accuracy score, productivity, quality audit score, and other indicators like average handle time per transaction. So we measure everything. And we have brought in sort of manufacturing type metrics and discipline and rigor into the service sector. So in turnaround time, this is determined by the client requirement. So a lot of the standard turnaround times that we have is 24 hours. So from the time of scanning and uploading a document to the time that it is input into the ERP system, 24 hours. There are also unique SLAs that we design for specific processes. Sometimes it's as little as 4 hours. So it is really driven by the customer requirement, by the business requirement. It's done in discussion with the client. And thereafter, once it is decided on, it is measured and it is reported on. So 24 hours would be a good benchmark standard for your standard AP, bank reconciliations, GL, so on.
Fantastic. Just expanding upon that, and of course, there are benefits in terms of the time zone differences as well. I imagine some of your clients are sort of leveraging that to expand their ability to service clients. Can you maybe talk to those benefits, Gehan?
So some of the benefits, so you were asking for the benefits of outsourcing engagement.
Particularly around the time zone differences that you have.
Oh, sure. So we can work to Australian calendar and Australian hours if required, but some customers actually find it advantageous to use the Sri Lanka time zone, which is 4.5 hours behind Australian hours, because when they come in the next day, because they are able to then cover a larger number of the day. So they can cover actually 16 hours or maybe 13 or 14 hours. And when they come in the next day, they find a lot of the work that they've uploaded in their evening is now complete. So fantastic. Some customers actually find that the Sri Lankan hours works to their advantage.
That's great. I've got a few questions here. I might just go through one by one. So a question here from Stan in terms of where does one start with this? What does the process look like? How long does it typically take to convert to an outsourcing model or embrace the outsourcing model? Let's just start with those 3 points if we can.
Sure, absolutely. So it will start with a simple inquiry, which will get routed to Kilimanjaro. And the first would be a simple chat, just to understand the requirements, to understand the solution that we will provide. And thereafter, we will customize a solution. So that will take maybe a couple of weeks along with the commercials. And if everyone's good to go with that, the typical transition period is 6 to 8 weeks. So it could be maybe 4 weeks or 5 weeks for a smaller project. For larger engagement, it could go up to 8 weeks. So during this period, we work on a project plan. And there are 3 activities that happen in parallel. Number 1 is the detailed process study, where we try to understand the specifics of your business, look at the KPIs and the metrics. Number 2 is the hiring of the resources where we would onboard people with the specific that meet the specific requirements that you might have. For instance, sometimes you might say, I want accountant level people, or sometimes it might be a junior accountant. So we would hire people based on the specific requirements of that engagement. And the third is the IT connectivity. So that isn't a huge challenge, but to make sure that you establish secure connectivity into the MYOB or Acumatica, you've got your user IDs, and you've defined the transaction codes that would be given. So you don't need to give our agents all access, you give them the required access for the transactions that they will be handling, and that only. So you look at the information security aspect as well. So typically 6 to 8 weeks, and it all starts with a simple chat.
Fantastic. Now, there's a further question here. What are the main risks that your clients have encountered?
Sure. So in terms of risks, there are a couple of points which we've identified as risks, and we look at risks very carefully. So one is during the transition or the migration. And that's one of the biggest areas of risk in my 17 years of experience, where the client and the service provider have different expectations, and where the service provider understands the business a little bit differently from what the client actually needs. So in order to address and mitigate that risk, we do detailed documentation and we sign off before we move to the next stage. So that helps to bring everyone onto the same page. That is risk number one, the transition. Number two is quality. So you need to make sure that the work is done accurately and it's done on a timely basis. So for accuracy, we actually have a quality audit team, a QA team that carries out quality checks, and they report their findings. So there's a lot of science to it. So we measure 2 measures of accuracy. One is called accuracy score, where we measure something called fatal errors. Fatal errors are things that have an impact on the financial statement, have a cost to the client, or have a legal or a tax implication. And we also have non-fatal errors, which are qualitative things which impact the quality of the information. So we measure all of these. So typically in the beginning of the engagement, we would do 100% quality audits, and thereafter we would reduce it to a sample basis. Communication is very, very important on a continuous basis. So we will be having weekly calls in the beginning just to make sure everything is settled down, and thereafter it settles down to what we call a QBR, quarterly business review, where we discuss our statistics, metrics, how are we doing on the KPIs. We have monthly customer surveys just to make sure that we are meeting the client requirements, so making sure that we listen continuously and that we have regular communication helps mitigate risks. Then, of course, you have the business continuity measures. So we are very, very strong in that. We have multiple centers in Sri Lanka that really stood the test during a pandemic. We are able to work remotely. We are in Sri Lanka's biggest IT park. They have immense, huge generators. They have fuel stocks that can last a month without any input from the government grid. We have multiple connectivity providers. So we are very well equipped in terms of providing business continuity.
Fantastic. There's a lot there to cover off. That's great to hear. Now, another question here. What is the minimum FTE or full-time employees that Informate looks at for new clients? Is there a minimum starting point?
We are very flexible on that, Stephen, but generally as a rule of thumb, we try to have 2 FTEs and above. The reason being that then you've got backup, you've got 2 people who can then cross-pollinate services, do quality checks between them. So 2 and above would be ideal, but we are very, very flexible. Fantastic.
Now, just moving on to another question. Is the outsourcing flexible based on the business needs and specifically seasonal fluctuations?
Absolutely. It's very flexible according to the business requirements. We work with multiple industries. We would like to have some measure of stability, ideally, where you have a set team then who is dedicated to that client. That's how we operate. But if there is a seasonal requirement which we can foresee and plan for, that is something that we can cater to.
That's great. Does Informate have physical offices? And I know that you talked to that briefly. Can clients require outsourced FTEs to attend the physical offices rather than working from home?
Absolutely. So we have 2 very large facilities, one in Colombo Fort area, which is the principal business district, the other in Orion City, which is the country's premier IT BPO park. So a lot of our work, some operations happen 100% in office physically. Others, we have adopted a hybrid, but this is entirely up to the client and what we discuss and agree with the client. So if the client's preference is for a fully office-centered delivery, then that's what we will do.
Fantastic.
And we can even maintain a dedicated space for that particular client. We in fact use the term extended office for some of our engagements. And that particular area is completely dedicated to the client. All the staff wear the t-shirts and they carry the stationery with the client's branding. They join the client's staff meetings and they qualify for value champions and other awards. So they very much feel part of the office in Australia or UK or wherever it is. So extended office is a concept that has worked very well.
Now, I'm sure we can all appreciate the value that that would also add in terms of the cultural aspects and some of those, less tangible elements that are so important in ensuring success. Now, hopefully it isn't needed, but could you please explain how Informate works on the performance management of staff?
Yes, so we have detailed performance objectives that are issued at the start of each year. And these follow the SMARTS objectives: specific, measurable, achievable, and all of that. So these are uploaded to our HRIS system, which is SAP. And thereafter, we have monthly performance-based pay, which is based on specific metrics. So annually, they are evaluated based on the performance objectives. There is a review that happens. Feedback is given to, they are measured on a 1 to 5 scale. And the annual increments, promotions are based on the outcome of that assessment of the performance appraisal. But we also have monthly performance-based pay being given, including monthly feedback. So every supervisor has what's called an agent report card where they discuss their performance. It's a simple one-pager. They look at their productivity, quality, turnaround time, and some of the other metrics. They share that feedback, and then it is quantitatively based or linked to their monthly performance-based pay. So that really helps to align business objectives with performance management.
That's great. Now, I will just flag that it's last call for questions. So if you do have any remaining questions, please use that Q&A button. Got a couple more here, Gihan. Firstly, does the Informate Global experience mean that Informate can assist with finance and accounting for our operations that are outside of Australia?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because the work that we tend to specialize in tends to be the same any part of the world. So you're looking at things like accounts payable, GL, bank recs, fixed asset management. So those tend to be very similar. Of course, you will have the small differences of sales taxes, but those we cover in the process study. So if you look at our global footprint of customers, we have customers from UK to Norway, Sweden. We work, in fact, in 15 different languages. We handle transactions in multiple languages, multiple time zones. So we are very, very well equipped to handle work from around the world.
Very good. I've got one question here in terms of some technical aspects. Now, it really comes down to how Informate can support the provision of laptops based on the client's requirements in terms of their own standard operating environment. This particular question calls out Microsoft Intune, but just to understand, Gihan, how can we have Informate provide the infrastructure but meet the client's objectives around a standard operating environment? Do you embrace Microsoft Intune and some of those technologies to support that?
Yes, absolutely. So that is something that, again, during the solutioning phase, we discuss, we take the client's requirements on board. So if there are specific requirements like you described, where they want specific Microsoft packages and some other specifications of the machine. Some of them specify they want dual monitors, they want workstations of a particular size, or they want to have CCTV coverage. Those are all things that we can configure. We include it in our bill of materials and in our costing, and we cater to that. So that is something that, as I said, flexibility is the key. Hearing our customers, taking their specific requirements into account. Those are key and things that we really pride ourselves in. So definitely that is something that we can cater for, and we will have completely segregated laptops for you if that is what your requirement is, with a separate set of configurations that are kept separate from the rest of the network.
Fantastic. Well, look, I think that's it for questions. Of course, if you do have any remaining questions, do feel free to email them through to us and we can get those addressed. I would like to just thank you, Gihan, for your presentation today. It was great to have you on board. Ronnie, thank you for your session as well. Great to hear from you both.
Thank you.
If there are any questions that have been raised as a part of this, or if you would like to explore further how your organisation could potentially leverage Informate as a partner, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. If you're a Kilimanjaro client, you can reach out to your account manager or contact us via that sales email address. You will receive a copy of the recording subsequent to this event, and we look forward to continuing the conversation with you. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic day.